It's always the successful ones that are the most eccentric and do the weirdest stuff. Because if you think Michael Jackson, you think of, a handful of people who changed the industry that they're in.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Because when you think of music, the Beatles are up there, Elvis is up there, and I think Michael Jackson's up there too, so.
I gotta ask you, man, this is a conversation, it got heated on Thanksgiving, just this 2018. I was up in Rochester, New York, and I'm hanging out with Victoria's brother and his husband, and we were talking about pop music, and they're huge Kylie Minogue fans, massive. They go everywhere with her. So I shouldn't have gotten into this, because I'm not as invested in the first place. I like Madonna, but it's not gonna ruin my life if Madonna never happened, where I haven't followed Madonna around the world to go see her on tour, but I had it stuck in my craw that I'm like, dude, Madonna is the reason why Kylie Minogue exists. Madonna is so much bigger than Kylie Minogue, and we went back and forth and back and forth. So, I mean, is there even a debate there?
I personally don't think so. I mean, Madonna is one of, correct me if I'm wrong, might be the first huge female pop star.
Oh yeah, yeah. If I'm not mistaken, the number one selling female artist in the world, followed by Beyonce or Rihanna, and then third place is actually Kylie Minogue, but it's substantial drops down.
Yeah.
So if you can't quantify it by record sales, which was my only point, I'm we can't be subjective about something that is actually quantifiable. If she sold more albums, she is a bigger celebrity, and they're you can't put a price tag on social relevance. I'm now we're getting into semantics at this point.
Just splitting hairs at that point.
So you're on the record to say my in-laws are incorrect.
I would go with Madonna.
Yeah, all right. Take that to the bank, Joseph and Matt. Argument ended officially. What's up, everybody? Thank you so much for stopping by. I'm Jeremy, and this is my new interview series where I highlight some of the local talent here in the area, fellow content creators, podcasters, Pensacon moderators, all sorts of stuff. And joining me here is a familiar face. Welcome back, Derek Diamond.
Thank you for having me back, sir.
Yeah, it's always a pleasure.
Yeah, it's always interesting being on the other side of the microphone and not the one hosting, but it's fun.
What do you think about that? Do you feel like having the control makes it less nerve-wracking for you?
There are some times that I still get nervous when I do interviews, but especially if it's someone that I haven't really talked to. Because there are some that, with some of my guests, I'll chat with them several times, through Facebook or through email. So I've built up a little bit of a connection. But if it's someone who I talk with, maybe exchange one or two messages, and then we start talking once I call them or through Skype or whatever, it can still be a little nerve-wracking because I'm I don't really know this person. But as long as you have, as long as you're well prepared to do what you're there to do, then it usually works out fine.
I'm just gonna jump right into the sex analogy, but it's like jumping straight into intercourse with no foreplay. It's I need that little bit of rapport building ahead of time just to break the ice. If you can share one laugh with that person, it's gonna make the interview so much better.
Yeah. Well, I'll use a good example as we're recording this, my newest podcast I put out was with AJ Caruso, who did the score for Survey, which both of us worked on. And he and I exchanged several emails, and then we talked for maybe 15 minutes before we actually started doing the interview, and it was great. We were both, loosened up, ready to go. We had nice, probably 45-minute chat, and then we talked for another 20 minutes after we technically finished the interview.
Oh, so, yeah, that's cool.
Yeah, he was a great guy.
You familiar with the horror special effects guy Tom Savini?
I know the name.
Oh, if you knew the face, it will trip you out. I got to bring this up real quick. So our friend AJ Caruso, as Derek just now mentioned, is going to be featured on his newest podcast. We'll put a link down in the description, but the man looks exactly like Tom Savini.
Oh, we actually talked about this.
Did you really?
Yeah.
Because I called him on it. I was like, dude, has anybody ever told you look like Tom Savini? And he's like, I get it all the time.
Yeah, we were talking about that actually after we did the interview.
Really?
Yeah, it was pretty wild. I don't know how it came up, but he was like, yeah, people say I look like Tom Savini.
I definitely. So I was at Pensacon the other day, and I met two gentlemen that were debating on whether they were going to go down and see, I want to say it was Batman the Animated Series panel, It was going on at the same time as the X-Men 90s animated series panel, which is that's tough. That's a tough decision to make.
Both great shows, by the way.
Almost, it's really hard for me to say which one I like more. I have a feeling you like Batman more.
You would actually be correct.
I get it. I might like Batman more, but I might have actually done a panel with the creators of X-Men the other day, so like I'm real like I'm high on them right now. Mm-hmm. They were so cool, anyways. But there was a point to this story. So the panels were going on at the same time. The two guys are waiting outside of the Grand Hotel to catch a trolley, and I'm selling it. I'm like, oh, come on, guys. These are the creators of such hit shows as Gummy Bears, Darkwing Duck. And the whole sales pitching, like, because they were involved in so many different things, and they're like, wow, that sounds really cool. Actually, you might say and do this. And then his friend pipes in for the first time that I heard him say anything. I look over at him. I'm like, dude, you look exactly like Steven Spielberg. And he's like, you're the third person that's told me that today. And I'm like, nice cosplay. And he's like, no. It's crazy.
I mean, he should have just wore it at that point. Like, yeah, I'm dressed as one of the greatest directors of all time.
Yeah, he was like, should I be offended? I'm like, I didn't say you looked like Steve Buscemi. Oh, poor Steve Buscemi.
What's funny is I remember the very first year at Pensacon, because I love the off-the-wall type of cosplay outfits. Like, you see so many Deadpools, Harley Quinns, Spider-Man, Venom.
Off the shelf.
Yeah. There was this woman there who was, I'd say she was probably like around our age. She was there with her mother, and her mother was dressed up as Flo from the Progressive commercials.
Oh, that's good.
And I was like, that's clever.
Uh-huh. Yeah, not the kind of things... Because I had somebody the other day that almost was like, oh, I thought you had to dress like comic book characters to go to a convention. I'm like, no, you can literally dress like whatever you want. And I've seen like some Hunter S. Thompsons before. I thought those were funny. It's just like every once in a while. There are... probably, I'd venture to say, too many Deadpools out there already. So if you're looking for cosplay ideas, unless you're like really funny, which a lot of these Deadpool cosplayers, they are like, they put on that suit and they become Deadpool, and you just like watch them go, interacting in other people's photo shoots and all that kind of stuff. And you're like, yeah, it's pretty fun. That's pretty funny cosplay.
Well, I think when you put on especially like a full bodysuit with a mask, no one can see you, so you have that little bit more extra confidence about yourself, because that's one of the reasons why I like Spider-Man so much, is that when he's Peter Parker, he's kind of timid, but when he puts on the outfit, he 100%. Becomes almost a different person. And he makes the witty one-liners and everything, so it's like he's being more of who he actually is.
That's a really good point. I know that you're a Spider-Man fan, as am I. I would say Spider-Man's my favorite superhero.
Same.
I think we've talked about this before. What did you think about Into the Spider-Verse?
Loved it.
Man, I want to say that was my favorite movie of 2018. I think I liked it more than Infinity War and all of that.
It's definitely up there. Part of me really wants to say Into the Spider-Verse was the best Spider-Man movie ever made.
Right?
Because it was so funny. The soundtrack was perfect. The animation style, it took a little bit to get used to. But once you got used to it, it fit perfectly, and to me it was like a love letter to the entire franchise.
It opened up so many doors as far as franchise potential by introducing all of these different characters that worked really well.
One of my favorite post-credit scenes of all time, too, by the way.
Yeah, guys, if you haven't seen the movie yet, you probably will have if you're watching this, but it's the play on that meme, that Spider-Man meme that was so popular, and it is hilarious.
I'm pointing. No, you're pointing. No, you're pointing.
And but seriously, funny, like the scene where Peter B. Parker gets knocked unconscious in the cemetery, and Miles has got to like carry him. The physical comedy in that is golden. And then the whole leap of faith thing is just like, oh man, it felt so like authentic Spider-Man. I was just like, this movie was so good.
Well, the great thing about Into the Spider-Verse is it was a very complete movie. It had humor. It had drama. It had a great coming-of-age story. Peter Parker, the alternate reality Peter Parker, in a way was redeemed through Miles Morales.
Yeah, good point.
So it had everything you could want in a movie.
I think I'm Peter B. Parker. Like I'm not as, like not Spider-Man, just that lazy guy with a pot belly that eats a lot of pizza. That's pretty much the extent of our similarities.
Our mutual friend Ray had an awesome Miles Morales cosplay.
Oh yeah. What about you? You ever cosplayed?
I actually haven't. I'm thinking about for Pensacon next year doing it, or if I go to any other convention sometime later this year. But I don't know what I would be.
I was gonna ask, like, what direction do you even go with something like that?
I mean, my first thought would be Spider-Man. But there's also, I'm a huge Legend of Zelda fan.
That would be a costume that would not hug your junk as much.
True. But I also don't know if I really have the look to pull it off, but then again, it's cosplay, so...
Yeah,
I
rock
might,
it.
I might rock a Link cosplay.
Can you imagine doing a panel, like moderating a panel in a Link cosplay?
I'd love to see Steve's reaction to it.
He would have a heart attack.
Yeah.
I remember that was something that was legitimately brought up a couple years ago at one of the moderator trainings. Can you cosplay in the interview? I'm thinking, like, that's a silly question. No, of course you can't. Like, why would you? What? It's not about you.
But what if I was moderating a Legend of Zelda panel?
Then it would be on brand at least.
Yeah.
But if you were doing, like, let's just say Sonic or something, you'd be like total conflict of interest. If that, dude, what do you think about the new Sonic?
I was hoping you would bring this up. When they first announced that there was going to be a Sonic the Hedgehog movie, I was very excited. Until I read that it was going to be live action, because very, very few movies have pulled that off. Roger Rabbit was one. Thinking back to late 80s. But that was more of the traditional style. Now we have the kind of CG, kind of hyper-realistic look. I want to see what it looks like on actual film, because the photos that you've pulled up are like artist drawings. But I want to see how it looks actually on screen.
Yeah, okay.
On the flip side, Detective Pikachu looks so much fun.
It does, doesn't it?
And the Pokemon look great. Pikachu is all furry and everything. He looks great. Charizard looks like a badass.
Mewtwo shows up. Or Mew.
Yeah, Mewtwo, yeah. I practically melted in my chair when I saw Mewtwo.
That's awesome. Yeah, see, I'm not a huge Pokemon guy, but even me was like, oh, that looks fun.
I don't know if the movie's going to be good, but I know it's going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah.
And Ryan Reynolds... I was like, I don't know about this. And when I saw the first trailer, I was like, I'm all in.
Was your first thought, and this would be legit, was your first thought that, like, he's so synonymous with Deadpool now that that's all you're going to be able to think about?
Partially, yeah.
That was 100% where my head was at. And then the minute I saw the trailer, it was almost like that anxiety was gone. I was like, I'm good with this.
Yeah.
So, if I'm not mistaken, and I'll put this image up for you guys, but the one on the left is... not 100% confirmed to be official, but it was leaked from some sort of promotional material. And then somebody over here on the right-hand side had slightly modified it, and it's like one looks like Sonic and the other one just looks kind of weird. Like, this works for me.
Yeah.
He doesn't have to look realistic in the first place, and I think Pokemon shows us that.
Yeah. No, I'm perfectly happy with the picture on the right.
Yeah.
Because it looks... like Sonic, but I mean, with the Sonic movie, I would have made it completely CG, like Pixar style. Because if you slightly change the look of Sonic for the movie, even in that situation, I think that's fine. But I just don't see it being good. And I really
no, I get it.
I really want it. Like, I'm a big Sonic fan.
Yeah,
I love the old Genesis games. And I really want it to be good, but I'm going in with super low expectations. I'm definitely going to watch it. I mean, I'm not going to lie to everyone and say I'm not going to see it.
You'll be there. Yeah. I will too.
Yeah.
I worked at, you remember back when there was a Gulf Breeze Cinema that was 4 theaters right across the bridge? I used to work at that place. And I was probably 19, maybe 19, 20 years old when... this is aging myself, but when the original Pokemon movie came out, and at the entire time that I worked there, that was the most busy that I'd ever seen the theater. It was such a phenomenon, and it almost missed me. I wasn't aware until that movie came out.
Yeah.
And now, like, there was that second resurgence with the mobile app where it just became huge again for a little while.
Pokemon Go, yeah.
And now there's a Sword and Shield game coming out that supposedly people are super excited about. Mm-hmm. Have you seen anything from them?
A little bit about it, yeah. I'd have to look up a little more information about it. I know everyone's been wanting a true open world Pokemon type game, which would sell a lot.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, so would Pikachu and Ash have to be the entry point?
Not necessarily. I mean, it's kind of goes back to the Detective Pikachu movie. You'd think,
good point.
Can you see a movie without Ash and his Pikachu? I do think there might be an Ash reference in the movie at some point, which I think would be kind of cool. But it's nice not having him as the focus, where he's been the focus of every single movie that's come out before. So it's nice to see a little bit of a change.
Hold up, man. Pikachu's the name of the species?
Mm-hmm.
So does Pikachu have a name?
Yes, Pikachu.
Are there multiple Pikachus?
Mm-hmm. And
they're all named Pikachu?
That's kind of their default name. Like in the game, you can actually give nicknames to all your Pokemon if you want. But
so
yeah,
Charizard, there's a bunch of Charizards. They're okay.
Yeah, that's the species. Is Charizard.
So you just now opened a whole world of Pokemon up to me. I thought that they were the name. Like Squirtle was one particular Squirtle. Mm-hmm. See, I can name some Pokemons, guys. We got Charizard, Mewtwo, Jigglypuff. That's about it. 3.
It's better
Nailed
than 0.
it. Yeah. No, I'm into it. It looks pretty cool. But so you moderated some events at Pensacon this year. Mm-hmm. This is not your first time doing it, but you haven't done it lately.
Yeah, I first started moderating in 2016. I was doing that in conjunction with also leading the video team. So I was wearing a lot of hats during that weekend. Did the same thing in 2017. 2018, I decided I had to cut out one or the other. And I chose that to do the video stuff. Well, fast forward to this year, and I knew that I wasn't going to be able to commit as much time to the convention because I had worked that Saturday and one of my best friends got married that same day too. So I wasn't going to be at the convention at all. So I said, I'm not going to be able to commit the time that I want to doing the video stuff.
For the whole weekend or whatever.
But I can still moderate a couple of panels. So that was why I decided to do that again. Mm-hmm. And I get enjoyment out of both of them. I mean, video's what I work in. So it's like I get to do what I like to do in a different environment, but also through doing the podcast, I actually kind of enjoy interviewing people in a way and getting to know them a little bit.
Yeah.
So doing the moderating is fun. I know it's not the exact same as doing a podcast, but there's some similarities to it.
Yeah, it's like you get the fundamentals.
Yeah.
Like primarily just being able to keep the conversation advancing.
Yeah.
It's basically the name of the game, you know? And as moderators, it's like you're really just giving the audience an opportunity to get warmed up. Like we were talking about in reference to wanting to have that minute with the celebrity ahead of time. What we're doing is affording the audience that same chance. It's like they might not directly be talking to them, but they get to see and learn a little bit about them, and it might give them the courage to come up and ask the questions, which ultimately, and I think that's my favorite part of conventions. I really like the people watching and seeing everybody's cool cosplays and stuff, but like I'm there for the inside baseball from filmmakers, from actors, directors, writers. I want to hear about their experiences, and so I try to bring that sensibility into my panels as well. What is it that you're looking for? Like if you are in the audience watching a panel, what are the kind of things that you want out of it?
Out of the panel itself?
Yeah.
Well, I just like learning new things that you wouldn't read online, like in a bio or something. So I'll use the example of when I moderated the panel for Eric Stolhansky, which ended up being like a last minute thing because the panel I was supposed to do, the guest, their flight was delayed due to the weather. So we had some things moved around, and I just had very little time to do research on Eric Stolhansky.
Super Troopers.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Part of the Broken Lizard studio company.
Mm-hmm.
It's so I learned a lot because I didn't know a lot about him, but he also told some funny like on-set stories, and I think through doing the panels and also doing the podcast, that's what I like hearing as well, is, you know, stories that you wouldn't hear from anywhere else.
So personal, but still related to the projects that they're attached to.
Yeah.
Yeah, I hear you. I find in the entertainment space, which this is a little more broad strokes, but there really tends to be the tabloid side of it that are more concerned with the, you know, relationships, personal things that are going on with celebrities. Think about something like People magazine or something versus the Hollywood Reporter, where it's mostly what actor's been signed on to what movie and all of those kind of like inner working, the mechanisms of what fuels this big giant machine. And that's where I'm the most interested in. But there's still something really like enjoyable about hearing people's authentic personality come out, and a lot of times when you're asking them, so what's your next project, that doesn't give them enough freedom to really be themselves, you know. So it's like I try to find a way to get what I want out of it, which is kind of like for example, with the Julia and Eric Lewald, who are the creators of X-Men the Animated Series, I wanted to ask about the relationship between Jim Lee and who wrote it, Claremont. Jim Lee and Claremont's 1992 or 1993 reissue of X-Men for their run. It happened almost simultaneously as X-Men the Animated Series, and I wanted to know what the relationship between those two things were, but then I realized, like, this is a story that we don't probably have time for, so I kept it more kind of general and knew the audience was going to have a ton of questions, so I basically turned it over to them. But it went good, though, this year. Do you feel like you had a standout that you think went the best?
Can I pick one of my own panels?
I hope you do. That's what I want to know.
So, and this was also on my podcast too, Steve and I were talking about actual like shows that I could do. And then we just kind of both had the idea, why don't we do a panel about defending bad movies?
Oh, nice.
And it was great. It was myself, Jason Robbins, Wally Phelps, and Julio Diaz, who's also a fellow moderator. The way it would work is that I had this hat with a bunch of different movie titles in it, and I would pull one out at random. I'd list it, and they would have to say nothing but good things about it.
That's a great idea for a panel.
And if they said something bad, I had a little buzzer hooked up to the sound system, so I would just buzz them out.
That's fantastic. What was the buzzer? See, this is the inside baseball shit that I'm interested in that you guys don't care about.
Well, no, it was literally an app that I found on my phone, and I just connected an aux cable to their soundboard.
That's fantastic. That makes sense. Yeah, that's really clever. So what were some of the movies that you pulled?
Let's see, Ang Lee's Hulk film.
Classic.
The one that got the most reaction was the live action Last Airbender.
Oh, yeah.
Everybody just goes, oh.
So, good turnout?
Oh, yeah, the room was almost completely full.
That's awesome.
It was great. My favorite line from that whole panel was when Last Airbender was drawn. And Wally, who's got a great sense of humor, he says, I just want to tell you, The Last Airbender is amazing. And you just hear somebody go, oh my God, are you serious? And then Wally said, wait, I'll tell you why. Because I've never seen it.
That's how you close out the panel. Oh, yeah, that's good. That's a really cool idea. I like that.
There were a lot. I had a list of anywhere between 30 and 35 movies. And we still had, I think, 10 left that we didn't go through. I told Steve it needs to be a yearly thing.
It sounds like it. It sounds like it will acquire more people as it goes on. The film festival has, it seems like, the 45-minute spots as opposed to the 4-hour slot or whatever it was before, 3-hour slot.
Did that work out better?
It worked out so much better. Because your enthusiastic horror fans are there for the horror panel. Your enthusiastic animation fans are there for the animation segment. And you would see the same faces in all of the screenings, but you would also see some of them, there's not a Venn diagram with a lot of crossover, like people that like, documentaries may not necessarily care for fantasy. So you would see the true like film buffs that would show up to each of them, but then there were definite stronger groups for each of the screenings, horror being the biggest, which was no surprise to me. I think horror film festivals tend to do pretty well. Trivia this year, on the other hand, Houston was always like, keep it simple, stupid. That was always his motto about trying to do these panels. But I always hated the idea of, just for example, what we used to do is have 25, 35 questions, and every person that answered a question would get a prize. Well, we'd start off with the small prize, and as the questions went along, they weren't necessarily getting harder, because with trivia, you either know it or you don't. It's not like you're working through complex algebra or something like that. However, the prizes would get more impressive, and like you could literally hang back to the end, happen to know one, throw up your hand and get the $100 prize as opposed to the person who at the beginning. So anyways, I'm taking all this into consideration. I'm building up these really sophisticated rules. I'll show you some other time, but I was relying on audio and video because I was playing sound bites and I wanted them to come through the sound system. I had slides that I wanted to put onto the projector. Real simple stuff, shouldn't have been a problem, but what I didn't think about is when I brought the Mac, I wasn't screen sharing with the projector. I was only projecting what was on my screen. So my answer key is right here.
Oh, no.
And I didn't, because in my mind, if I hooked up dual monitor, I've got what I want in front of me and what I need over there. And so that was a little bit of a problem. I'd have to open up the picture after I saw the title of it. I'd open up the picture, plug back in the connection to the thing. It's just not smooth, not seamless. And then for the sound bites, for whatever reason, I didn't set it up in a playlist, but I had 15 different audio files all within a folder. I would double click the audio file to open it up to play in iTunes, and then unfortunately it would autoplay to the next song. So I'd hit play, it'd go into the 5-second sound bite, and then just start playing some random song. So I'd have to stop it on the fly because it's just going to whatever's next on iTunes. So nothing bad happened, but it's just not the kind of stuff that I was anticipating. So I'm going to take what I learned this year. I mean, we still packed the house out. Everybody had a good time. But it was like a elimination round. So if you wanted to play, you answered one of the first 10 questions. We had 10 seats in the front. The people who became contestants would move up to the front. The second round, we'd eliminate 5. Third round, we'd eliminate 3 till it was a head-to-head at the end. And we had the big prizes for the people that made it the longest. So all of that was super smooth. It was well thought out. But yeah, just from a freaking technical perspective, I was like, I'm in over my head. Fuck. This is why Houston always told me that. But I think it went well, and a lot of the people that show up to the trivia have been there for 3 and 4 years. So
That's
I'm
awesome.
imagining that when you guys bring back this Defending Terrible Movies, you'll see the same faces again, because it sounds like people liked it.
Yeah.
Good.
But yeah, that would probably be my highlight from Pensacon this year.
Nice. So did you go meet any celebrities?
I did, yeah. I mean,
obviously you moderated for a couple of them, but
yeah. I met, I did meet Eric Stolhansky after the panel.
Yeah.
Got my photo with him, chatted with him for a few minutes. Got to meet Christian, who used to wrestle in the WWE with
Edge.
Most notably known for the Edge and Christian tag team. Sweetheart of a guy. He got a photo with him, chatted with him for maybe 5 minutes or so. Super nice guy. I will say my one disappointment was that our paths never crossed, but I didn't get to meet Rob Paulson, who I had interviewed on my show right before Pensacon, because every time I would go to his table, he wasn't there.
I'm going to ask, and I hate to be the guy. Who's Rob Paulson?
Oh, so he's a voice actor. He's primarily known for being Pinky and Pinky and the Brain.
Okay.
He was the original Raphael in the Ninja Turtles cartoon.
Very cool.
He was Yakko in Animaniacs, and he's been in a ton of other shows. Like chances are you heard his voice in some show growing up.
Oh yeah, now that you name all those, and that's That's one of my blind spots, which is unfortunate. I have many. I don't know Harry Potter very much. There's a lot of stuff that I don't know, but I love, obviously, Kevin Conroy. That was like, wow, Kevin Conroy's here. That's amazing. Yeah, right? But a lot of these other voice actors, I'm just not as familiar with their names, even though they tend to be so much more prolific sometimes. Like, you look at their IMDb, and it's like 100 credits, video games, movies, you know, just every different part of the spectrum. So that's cool, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, most definitely. What's your time looking like? What's your time looking like? You got a minute or you need to head out?
I got a little bit more time.
All right, for sure. Little inside baseball, guys. I know that right before we recorded this podcast, I had Robbie from Nerd Cave over on, and we like
Long-time friend, Robbie.
Yeah, most definitely. And I think I started doing this about a year after you guys did. And I remember approaching you about it because I didn't know anybody else in town that was doing something similar. I've told you this story. I've probably told it on a podcast before, but Josh Kessler is like, my buddy Derek Diamond does a podcast. He's in the Nerd Cave Network. And I've been doing it for a long time since then. It's afforded me some pretty cool opportunities, but it never really grew exponentially in the way that maybe I had thought it would originally. And I mean, you've seen that. You know what I mean? There's no misconception that you're going to come over here and be in a video that's going to like go viral or something like that. So what is the thing that keeps you wanting to interact, wanting to do podcasting and things like that?
Well, it's kind of changed throughout the years. So with the Nerd Cave, it started because Zach and I wanted to have an outlet to discuss things that we like. So we started the Nerd Cave. You know, we had our friend Willis on, and a few months after that, he left, and then Robbie came on, and that went on for a few years. And we did it because we have a lot of these common interests, but don't really get to talk about it with anyone else. Or at least I'm saying that from my personal experience. And that was our outlet to talk about it. And then from doing my solo show, I've always been fascinated with like celebrity stories, or not even just celebrities in general, but just people's stories. Like, how did they get to where they are? My favorite types of books to read when I was a kid were autobiographies, because even as a kid, I was like, how did that person get to where they are? So then I thought, well, why not do my own show about that? So then was doing that for a while, and then it started to feel kind of stagnant, because the show truly became like a variety show. Like, it's one week I would be talking with an author, then the next week I would be doing a roundtable on the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Then the following week I'd interview a band. Then the following week I'd be talking about the musical Hamilton. So, which I did do a podcast about Hamilton. And it wasn't very sustainable, and I was getting very burnt out on it. So back in the summer, I went to Philadelphia for Podcast Movement, which is a 4-day podcasting conference. It rotates location every year. And I met this guy who was from Manchester, England. And he was asking me, because he did a sports podcast, and I told him that I work for a minor league baseball team, so he was asking me all about that. And the transition went to my show. So I told him what it was about, and he said, well, how serious are you about doing it? Do you want it to be successful, or are you just doing it as a hobby? Because if you're just doing it as a hobby, then what you're doing right now is fine. But you explaining it to me the way you are tells me that you're not very happy with it. And I was like, well, I am getting a little tired of it, a little stagnant and everything. So he said, well, if you don't want to be a professional podcaster, what do you want to do? I said, well, I want to make movies. And he said, make your podcast about making movies. So we talked a little more about it, and he said, don't just focus on getting like actors and directors. Talk with editors, composers, producers. Get the stories that, because a lot of them don't get to tell their stories. Those who really work behind the scenes, like a film editor. I mean, I'm sure there are some podcasts that are dedicated to that, but I never really hear about them. So I thought about it, and I said, you know what? I'm going to do that. So once I hit my 200th episode, I said I'm going to take the rest of the year off and then come back in 2019 with new music, new logo, new format, new everything. So it's evolved from now. It's with my show, it's getting to know people in the industry that I want to work in.
It's very smart. It's very smart, even if because from a business perspective or from a furthering your own career perspective, it gives you an opportunity to shine a light on these people who are, as you said, underappreciated. It's also a great networking opportunity, and it gets you, if you interview an editor this week, then next week you know a video editor.
Yeah.
And I bring all that up because I wanted to ask you before we do kind of wrap this thing up about the Parker syndrome, because not only do you want to make movies, you have actually made a movie. So, I mean, talk to us about that, man. What was that? What's it about, and what was your experience like?
Do you want the long version or the short version?
You tell me. How much time you got?
So, I'll tell you how I came up with the idea of it. So, and it actually brings Robbie into the equation because he was in the original Parker syndrome that I did.
Okay.
So, when I graduated college, I went to college for, at the time it was called video broadcasting. It's a degree that doesn't exist anymore, but that's what it was at the time. When I got out of college, I knew that I wanted to just make something. I didn't know what. I just knew I had a few friends that we could do, we had done some like silly videos that, of us like going on camping trips and just doing really stupid stuff.
Yeah.
But I wanted to make like an actual movie. So then that summer I was introduced to Willis, who I mentioned earlier, who was on the early episodes of the Nerd Cave. And he had wanted to do the same thing as well. I had never spoken with him before in my life, and he says, "You know what? We should make a movie. You know some people, I know some people." So I was like, "Okay." I mean, I was very tentative about it because it's one of those things that, it sounds great, but I'm like, I don't really know who this guy is, so what's going to happen? So then I came up with the general idea for a story, fleshed it out over a couple of weeks. And next thing I knew, what was intended to be a short film ended up being a 45-minute movie.
So there's a Parker syndrome that exists that's 45 minutes long.
Yes.
Oh man, I'm gonna have to check that out.
It was made in 2008, so it was recently celebrated the 10-year anniversary,
wow.
Which is
holy
insane
cow.
to think about.
It really is.
So fast forward to several years later. This is probably early 2017. I watched it again, and I hadn't watched it for probably 3 or 4 years. And I was thinking, you know what? If I were to make that now, I would probably do this instead. And then I would do that instead. And then just the wheels in my head started turning because I'd been wanting to make something more in that wheelhouse for a while. And then I just started coming up with all these ideas and thinking, I kind of want to do this. So I talked with Steve Wise, who we both know, ran the idea by him. He said that, he definitely thinks it's doable, and he agreed to help me out with it. And then there were some twists and turns. I went through a lot of script rewrites and had a lot of 2018 I had a lot of personal changes in my life, so that kind of derailed the production of it because I originally wanted to shoot it in the fall, but then things happened and it got pushed back to December, and we shot it. Casted actors, found a few different locations to use, went through the whole process, and it was a great weekend. It was very. I was very nervous in the beginning because there were a lot of things that I didn't know that I was figuring out. It's like a lot of things. You don't really know what you're getting yourself into until you actually do it.
Yeah, like my terrible movie trivia story. Yeah.
So as things kept going, it went extremely well. And I remember I wrote a very heartfelt Facebook post that night after we've wrapped, and I will forever be grateful to everyone who helped me out with that because it was something that I had wanted to do for a long time, and it was good to end the year on a note like that after going through a lot of personal changes.
So how long did you guys end up shooting? You said it was a weekend, like full days, Saturday and Sunday. were you editing and obviously you're looking at dailies as you go, but when you got home, were you looking at the footage that you had and then go back and have to reshoot any of it on Sunday, or did you get everything you needed?
So as of this recording, I'm about to wrap up the rough cut of editing.
Good.
So I've got to go through and then see, okay, well, is this going to work? Do we need to go back and shoot some close-ups, some cutaways, just for some variety and whatnot? But overall, I'm very happy with how the footage turned out.
How much?
Kevin, the same guy who shot Survey, shot the Parker Syndrome.
Oh, yeah.
Kevin Almodovar.
And that's not all that. I mean, Survey is a beautiful film. Until Death, which is his film that he wrote, directed, and produced, is beautifully shot. This guy he's a pro. He's a great example of someone who is good at what he does. You gonna cash in that friend favor on our friend Tom Savini and get him to do the score for it?
I've thought about it.
Yeah, he's
really
great.
Thought about
he's
it.
Very good.
Yeah,
I like his sensibilities. I like a lot of what he's done on his own projects as well. All of you guys, everybody in this group of people are multi-talented. It's not like you can't do everything by yourself, but sometimes out of necessity, you've got to learn to do like you said, having lots of plates spinning, just out of necessity for creating podcasts. You got to go in and learn how to use Photoshop to make thumbnails. You really need to go in and learn how to use Illustrator to make vectors and logos. You got to use Premiere to do your video editing, Audition to do your audio editing. So you're getting a very broad spectrum of marketable skills that are actually, very beneficial in life. But that's really cool, man. How much of what was in that original 45-minute cut has made it over almost in its original form?
In its original form, it's, in that sense, I would say it is very different. Like, there are some core aspects of the story that are there. So the general idea of what the story is about, it's about this girl named Emma who is a freshman in college, and she's trying to balance the issues of her broken family. Like, she's got an older brother who she's close with. He had a big falling out with their dad, so he's moved out. So she's kind of at home with no security blanket, if you will. And then she's also dating this guy who on the outside seems great, but may not necessarily be the case.
I got you. And what are you anticipating your runtime being for this? Is it more of a short?
It's definitely more of a short. No, there's, I think, 8 or 9 scenes total. I'm thinking it's going to be anywhere between, I'd say at most 15 minutes.
Who do we have to squeeze into a cape in post so that we can screen this thing at Pensacon next year?
Well, I've talked with Steve about it. Unfortunately, it doesn't fit in any of the genres, but
right.
I made the joke that I was just going to slip him a 20 and then just be have a flash drive and be like, I'm going to do it.
Yeah.
But no, it's once it's completed, I am going to be submitting it to film festivals. And
good luck, man. That's awesome.
We'll see what happens. But no, I was glad to finally do it, and I'm hoping to maybe do another project either in the fall or in the winter.
Good. Yeah, I'm eager to see. I want to see the 10-year anniversary edition, right?
You'll get to see a slightly younger me, because I'm always the old man of whatever group I hang out with. And
What's
then
up with that? I think I am too.
You'll see a very young Robbie Rawls.
Oh yeah?
Yeah. Because let's see, Robbie was, I think he was right out of high school at that time.
Oh man, I got to see this. And then I want to just the evolution, like how much you've grown in the past 10 years and how much deeper your understanding of it is from other projects that you've worked on. And you've got so much more experience actually. Like you said, you work over at the Wahoo Stadium where you do production and stuff like that. So I'd imagine all of that stuff, every experience that you had between then and then is really going to add to, the finished project, which you guys keep an eye out for that. Hopefully you do hit the film circuit hard. And I mean, I'm sure that a lot of conventions probably do genre, but that doesn't mean there aren't 1,000 places out there that are specifically doing drama,
Yeah.
Did you set out to make, did you say, I want to make a drama, Or did you say, what was the inception of the idea for Parker Syndrome? Can you even remember that?
For the original one? It was just kind of a random thing that happened. I don't remember there being anything, like any certain thing that sparked it, because it's been so long ago.
Yeah.
That I'm sure there was, but I can't remember it off the top of my head. But I know it started with a very, very basic idea that just kind of blossomed into, subplots and other characters and various things like that.
Man, I'm curious to check it out. All right, well, it's been fun.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you for coming by.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
You guys, thank you for coming by to check this out. If you enjoyed this video, do me a favor, take a second to smash that little thumbs up button right there. It really helps the channel grow and helps get the word out. And if you've got any ideas for content creators you'd like to see a collaboration with, let me know. Had a little frog in my throat there, excuse me. Also, make sure that you check out Derek's archives of projects. Where can they find some of your stuff if they want to get familiar with your work?
So the podcast is at the Derek Diamond Experience. It's available on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. You can also follow the show on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at D Diamond Podcast. And the Parker Syndrome is on Instagram at the Parker Syndrome. There's a Parker Syndrome Facebook page, and on Twitter at Parker_Syndrome.
Support independent film, guys. I'm a big proponent of that as somebody who does host the film festival. I think it's really important that people do, take a minute to acknowledge, obviously, all of the hard work that goes into these things. Like you mentioned, so many of the people that don't get love for the work and the blood, sweat, and tears they put into, they're some of the most essential parts of it. Like the value of a good editor. I mean, it's Steven Spielberg can shoot magic, but if you just give it to Edward Scissorhands in the editing booth, it's not going to matter. It's not going to matter. So yeah, everybody does have a very pivotal part, and I guess that's the takeaway. But let's talk about it down in the comments section. And on behalf of both me and Derek, and until next time, be terrible.